Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we're bringing you a Kickstarter preview of an upcoming game. This one's called Rise of Tribes. It is an area control game for 2 to 4 players and plays in about 45 minutes, which is fantastic.
45-minute area control game.
Hello.
Yes,
we'll take that.
Sign me up.
So we have a 4-player game set up. We're going to walk you through the components, how to play a typical round, because it's very, very easy to play. To start off, you're going to place the board or the tiles. Each of these tiles is an individual tile. There's 3 different types of tiles. You have forest, you have mountains, and then you have lakes or rivers.
Yep.
Each of these produce a very particular type of resource. Your mountains produce stone, your forests produce wood, and then your lakes or rivers produce your food, which is fish in this case. To start, you're going to pick a random starting player. That starting player is going to get a board and a number of meeples, 20 in this case, that represent their tribesmen or their settlers. And they're going to have 1 variable player power they're going to pick from. There's 2. At the start of the game, you're going to pick one of these.
Right, and these aren't final components. These may be printed on the player boards. They may not. Right now, we have cards, but it adds a nice little bit of variability for sure.
Each player is also going to get a set of goals, which is called the goal deck. In these goals, you have things that will allow you to get additional abilities through the course of the game or to score just points outright. Now, the game is a race.
Right.
There's no number of rounds in here. You are competing to get 15 points before any other player at the table. So, getting back into the setup, the start player is going to put 2 meeples onto the board anywhere they so wish, and then around the table, players are going to seed their meeples. Some players may get additional meeples or be able to split up their meeples or even get some starting resources as well.
Yeah, a little bit differently as it goes around the board for the first round.
There's 5 phases in the game. We're going to walk through them in order, minus the first phase, because we'll get back to that and why you need to do that later. Let's talk about the main board first, and then we'll get into the player actions. The main board has 4 different main actions you're going to be taking throughout the entire game. That's grow, move, gather, and lead, and it's dictated by the dice that are placed on them. Now, to start the game, the dice are going to be placed in a very particular orientation. You're going to have sun, moon, and then a blank die. That's all that's on the dice.
Right.
And then, on your turn, starting with the first player, they're going to get points for villages. We'll get back into that in a moment. They're going to take the 2 dice that were pushed back. We'll show you how the dice get pushed back. They're going to roll those dice, and then they get to, look at that roll.
2 suns.
That's pretty fantastic.
That's nice.
If they roll doubles, they're going to create an event. There's an event deck at the top. Those events can allow you to gain resources quicker. They allow you to kill, hunt mammoths, a whole bunch of variety of different things.
Basically affect the game in a variety of different ways. The other thing about doubles is if you have 2 events out already, many of the events allow you to, if you roll doubles, to remove that event and replace it.
Yep. So you're going to place these 2 dice that you rolled, and I just happen to roll 2 suns. When I place them, I can choose any one of the 4 basic actions. However, you cannot choose the same action
for
twice
each dice
in a round. You're going to take that die and you're going to place it into the leftmost spot. Now, if you look at these spots, there's 3 spots for each of these actions. I will take that and then I will slide over the die that gets ejected from it and put it down to the bottom. That means that's the dice that the next player in turn order will roll. And then I'm going to take the action of the actual swat.
Exactly, but it all depends on the dice that are there now that you've placed that one. So as you can see, Jeremy put into the lead section, so he's going to take the lead action. He's got a sun, a moon, and a blank space, which is basically a neutral scenario.
Yeah.
There's 3 different scenarios whenever you take an action. There's going to be that scenario where you don't have 2 moons or 2 suns, or you're going to have potentially 2 moons. That's not a good thing.
Yeah.
That generally sort of...
It's a lesser action.
A lesser action. It's the same action, but it's going to be to a lesser degree. 2 suns, obviously, conversely, is a better version of the action.
I'll talk about the first 2 actions. The first one is growing. That's simply taking the number of meeples that it shows on the board and placing those in any orientation you wish, as long as you have a meeple representing that area already.
Right.
So if I went to the grow action and placed my die here, I would shift them over, and then I'd look, I have 2 suns, and I get to place 4 meeples. And in this case, I only have 2 meeples on the board, so I have to place all 4 there.
Exactly.
The second action is move.
Yeah, move is as simple as it sounds. Same thing, you're going to place a die, and you're either going to move 4 people as a standard action, or 2 or 6, depending on whether you have moons or suns. Now, you can't move the same guy multiple times, so you're going to be taking one of your meeples and moving it once, and then a different meeple and moving it again. Now, you can do a number of things. You can use this to spread out and claim different territories, or get position in some of those territories for when you gather, or you can move a bunch of guys from multiple territories into one territory to try to increase your position there.
The third action is gather. The main action here is if you own 2 tiles, you can collect 2 resources from each of those 2 tiles. So if I'm on a forest tile and I'm on a mountain tile, I'd collect 2 wood and 2 stone. However, those will vary depending upon the suns or the moons that you may have there. The last one is lead.
Yeah, and lead, this is simple. Lead is going to allow you to take some of your goal cards. It could be 1, it could be 2, or 3 in the case of 2 suns, and add those to your in-progress goals to the side of your board. And as Jeremy said earlier, these goal cards can range from anything from something you can complete by discarding a number of resources, or attaining a certain situation on the board. Say if you are in at least 8 different territories or things like that.
Yep. Once you are done taking your 2 actions, you'll notice that 2 die have shifted to the bottom. Those 2 will go to the next player to do on their action. Now, there's another step here that happens. You're going to resolve conflict. There is a maximum limit of 5 meeples in any particular area. So anytime you have 6 or more, there's going to create conflict until it goes below that threshold. So in this case, when I place these meeples, I did so knowing that I was going to lose one. There are 6 guys here, which means one of my guys has to come off. Now, if that's in a different area where we have multiple meeples, they'll combat each other. Now, there's no dice rolling. It's simply negating them one at a time.
Very
until
streamlined.
you get underneath that. So in this case, we have 8 meeples. We pull 2 off, and then we pull 2 off because we're at 6. Now we're at 4. We're underneath the threshold. That's the end of the conflict resolution.
Right. It's really just a numbers game, so you can really plan and strategize quite a bit.
Yeah. Also, anytime at the end of your turn, you're allowed to do 1 of 2 actions. You can build a village, or you can build any of the in-progress goals that you have. Each of these progress goals requires you, as David said, to have particular positioning up on the map, or to expend some of the resources you have to get additional abilities through the course of the game. The village is the most important thing. At the bottom of your player board, each player has a unique number of resources they have to expend in order to place a village. Village tiles are very simple. You get to place this in any area that you have representation in there. And you're going to take one of your meeples and place it over there. Why this is important is because the very first thing that happens on your turn, which we skipped over, was for each village that you have that hasn't been conquered by another player, you get 1 victory point.
Right. So if you get villages early, if you get a 1 or 2 villages in the first round and no one does anything about it, you're going to be scoring points.
Yep.
This is definitely a game where you can't just sit around and play your own game.
Yes.
You absolutely have to not only pay attention to what your opponents are doing, but you
have to keep them in check.
You have to stop them or keep them in check for sure.
And it has to almost be a communal effort at some points because you're going to be cordoned off from very particular portions as you're expanding and growing. So if I'm building very heavily in this area and someone's just collecting a ton of resources through the gold cards they have or through expansion and using the right dice at the right time, they're going to be able to create a really quick engine. And that's cool in this game, though, because it's supposed to be a game that ramps up quickly because it plays in 45 minutes. It's not to be a long Terra Mystica experience.
Yeah, it's meant to be a fast-paced game, and this is, again, one of those things where if you notice it, you don't want to keep your mouth shut about it. You want to talk to the other people at the table and say, hey, he's going to win the game unless we do something about it. And when you say we, you really mean it because sometimes you find yourself, depending on the situation, you're in a much worse position to do anything about it. So you really need to sort of like have temporary alliances with some of the other players.
Yeah, I mean, that's especially important with the goal cards. Several of the goal cards will allow you to, when you take your actions, such as your grow, your move, or your gather, you're collecting 1 or 2 more resources every time you do that. So if people position themselves off, build very strong tribes, you're going to have to go in there and knock them down gradually in order to stop them from winning quickly. Very cool game. Very quick game. Like we said, 45 minutes in and out for a area control style game.
Yeah, honestly, I think this is another great sort of entry-level concept for an area control game.
Yep.
You know, I'm not a big fan of area control games, but you know, whenever I see one that's more accessible than the standard one, it's always interesting to me.
So that is Rise of Tribes by Breaking Games. If you guys have any questions, make them in the comments below. We'll answer them for you. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. If you guys are at Origins, stop by, check us out, say hi, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Season 1 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored by our friends at TMG Games. And at Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.